welcome home. Poorly aged video games are a sensitive topic. It might feel really bad to realize a game we love doesn't feel as fun to us anymore, but all it really means that a game has aged poorly is that games grew as a medium since that game was most recently played. But must this mean that the poorly aged games are now less fun than they were before? Or might it just be that recent games have made it clearer how those classic games always had parts which we never really may have enjoyed? Zelda Ocarina of Time is one of those all-time classics, with its music, world, dungeons, characters, mamma mia. But if you've ever glanced at Dark Souls gameplay, you might take one look at Ocarina and wonder, much of this is actually really similar, so why does Dark Souls combat feel so much more natural? Dark Souls even integrated the roll into the combat, while Ocarina is still like, yeah, see target, then stun and slash. Was that really the best idea Nintendo had for a combat puzzle? Even Nintendo may have asked themselves this since this time, because many later Zelda games went in on combat with fantastic ideas. Wind Waker and Twilight Princess had those special moves and sometimes even enemies to apply them on. Even if Wind Waker and Twilight Princess seem to barely scratch the surface with these special moves, it might be easy to feel that Ocarina's combat feels far more stale now that you've seen how pretty the horizon looks when gazed at from other perspectives. Lives might be another one of those features, which may not be easy to see how you might not actually enjoy them until you play later games without any lives and realize you don't mind that they disappeared. In a world where immediacy and instant gratification has become king, it may feel difficult to pick up a classic without save states, because you might just want to play and enjoy it without what might feel like a big distraction. Discussions on lives and game overs may mention the classic Mario games, and while their design is often very solid, I'm not sure I actually enjoy these games that much, and maybe lives and game overs are a part of it. But it might also be that more modern side-scroller Mario games have embraced their chaos and power-ups more. Sure, the Hammer Bros power-up may have felt more precious when it was more rare back in the classic Marios, but was that more fun? Or is it more fun just to have the power-ups? Maybe this is why some players feel some games age poorly while other players don't. Some games may grow to understand their own fun better, but a game might have more than one kind of fun, which might be why some players enjoy earlier titles more. Skyrim is one of those games which may already have felt poorly aged on release. It's one of the most notoriously buggy games ever made, but the game's big strength is that it's just simply fun, and it might be easy to see why that's valuable with one look at Skyrim's pre-predecessor Morrowind, which is an incredible game but is also borderline hostile to new players with its sticky character creator, which you're hit with just a few minutes into the game, when you're unlikely to know that athletics, acrobatics, speed, and alchemy are mostly just the best talents. But Oblivion might be the Elder Scrolls game which has aged best, because it's still so easy to step out and get lost in its world. But the pretty art might not be the only reason why. Maybe graphics are what age most loudly in video games, and even if many people might say they don't care that much about graphics, good graphics, or at least art which makes the most of the graphics, is often a huge difference. Wolfgang Puck once said,
"For me, presentation is very important because we always eat with our eyes first."
And even if a big plate of Morrowind is delicious, it might be difficult not to at least notice its polygons. As long as you enjoy the game's ideas, the graphics might not matter that much, even if pretty art and fancy graphics often may help. It's like a great car covered by rust. Like, even if it's still a really good car underneath, the rust might confuse the people who are used to good cars which aren't covered by rust. Maybe this is a final point on aging video games, because part of games' age may also be in us. Maybe what ages most clearly is taste for video games. There may have been a time when all that many of us wanted was more zombie survival games, or more open world sandbox games with the freedom to take any car and just drive into the horizon. But when we finally do get that new flavor of ice cream which we said we wanted, we may often find that it doesn't taste as good as we may have imagined it might. There were more than a few games to feed the appetite for sandbox and zombie survivals in the past, and we may have had enough at this point to understand why Jesus said man shall not live on sandbox alone. Do we really need to play any more GTA games at this point in time? Don't we kinda know what those games play like now? Maybe this is why the heavily experimental games are often those who truly stick out in memory, because that flavor might only exist in that particular ice cream. There's been so many games that have been good but didn't have that point. And maybe that's one part of why even if an experimental game had many parts we didn't like, the good qualities might make those games easier to forgive, because at least they tried a new kind of ice cream. And that might make the game age better, even if it has lives and game overs, or any other part which we may not particularly enjoy. To wrap this up, all it might mean when a game has aged is that the medium of games have grown since that time. And that might mean it's good when games age poorly, because it may mean that game let everybody else learn how to try what they tried, but in a better way. Maybe we all stand on the shoulders of those who were here before us. Now, you may not have liked everything I said here, but this is just what I have felt, which means it's not superior to what you might feel. So if Ocarina of Time's combat has aged well to you, then feel free to share why you might feel that way. Whether here or the Discord server, new ways to see a classic game might still be had just from simple conversation like this, because sometimes it might just not be easy to see how a game still might be great even if it really has aged poorly. Now, there are actually more Nisse videos on games and age. Press here if you want that. Feel free to like, subscribe, and or comment here, and feel free to help me buy groceries on patreon.com/NIS5E. Oh, and a new intro text is also up for learning to feel on NIS5E.com. Thanks to Grocery Gang, Awan, Mwah, Egg, Omger, Zach, Nathan, and of course everybody else. And that includes you. Thanks for your presence. Mwah.